you, Joey. Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 25th Board of Mayor and Alderman work session. Some of you may know, it was announced this morning at breakfast with the mayor that Ken Moore had knee replacement surgery last week, so I am standing in for him. I asked for grace. I will tell you my probably worst habit is not calling the aldermen by their title, so it's not disrespect, it's just out of practice. So we'll start the meeting with a call to order, a roll call. Jason Potts.
Present.
Oh, see, I already did it. Okay. Matt, we're just going to do it.
Let's just roll with it. I'm
Alderman
here.
Brown.
Present.
Alderman Baggett. Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Peterson.
Present.
Alderman Hanson.
Present.
And Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
All right. Thank you. First thing is citizens' comments. We allow citizens to speak at this meeting with things that are not on the agenda, but also if you want to speak to something on the agenda, we ask that you go to the famous column and fill out a speaker card so that we can recognize you, capture your address, and have that for the record. We will start with item number 1, which is a presentation of City of Franklin's entry-level driver training program, for new CDL applicants. And Eric, you wanted to tee this up?
I'll just say a quick introduction. You all have met Chris Franklin. He's our management fellow working with a number of different projects, but this is one he's worked with our public works team to develop a driver training program that we think has a lot of promise in having that skill development amongst our team and do it a really efficient and effective way. So Chris is going to walk you through the origin of that program and what's proposed, and we'll take it away from there. Chris.
Thank you for having me. My name is Chris Franklin. As he said, I'm the management fellow, and I've had the honor since I've been here to work on the entry-level driver training program for the city of Franklin. Entry-level driver training, what it is, it's a set of regulations and rules that went into effect February 7th of this year. It was created by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and it deals with commercial motor vehicle drivers and the license that you need to operate those commercial motor vehicles, which is a CDL. I just wanted to give a little example of what exactly is a commercial motor vehicle. The City of Franklin has many within the Public Works Department: parks, sanitation, streets, and water and sewer, such as the recycling trucks, the trash trucks, any dump truck you see, water management trucks, brush trucks. Those would all need CDLs in order to operate. With these new regulations, there's an impact on the city of Franklin. Historically, when you need to get a CDL in order to operate a commercial motor vehicle, all you would have to do is study the CDL book, which the city will help you with. They normally team you with an employee who's experienced and has a knowledge of CDL and what you need to get it. And when they felt you were comfortable with the information, they would then send you to the state to take a permit and then take your driving test. That's no longer allowed. Now, anybody that wants to get a commercial motor vehicle license for a CDL has to enroll in and complete entry-level driver training. So now any Franklin employee that needs a CDL, they're going to have to go to entry-level driver training school through a registered training provider. And what exactly is an entry-level driver training provider? It's an entity that's registered on the training provider registry. They have a curriculum, vehicles, facilities, instructors that are all approved by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and they must be licensed, registered, and certified in the state that they're in on top of that. So if the city of Franklin needs to turn employees into CDL drivers, we would have to send them out to an entry-level driver training school, because currently we don't have that school within our own facilities. That would cost between $6,000 to $8,000 a person on average. And a lot of those schools, they only accept students that are then going to work for them. Because if you don't know, like CDL drivers are in high demand right now. So a lot of places, they just want to train their own. And if we did send them there, there's a possibility they could potentially poach our employees because they're CDL drivers, then they need them, so they'll take them. So it's $6,000 to $8,000 a person, and it's extremely hard right now to hire CDL drivers. So in response to this, the city of Franklin has decided to create and implement their own entry-level driver training program. This program meets all the rules and regulations set forth by Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. We're utilizing a curriculum that was developed by a research consortium called Clear Roads, and it came at no cost to the city. Our facilities and vehicles all meet the rules, the requirements, and the rules and regulations. Our instructors will be chosen from current employees who've had a CDL for at least 2 years, and we feel are knowledgeable to be classified as instructors. This program will allow us to save money and train our CDL operators on demand. Some more benefits to this program. If we're planning on giving instructors that we deem certified or we deem able to do the job, $2 an hour and increase. This, if we had two, we plan on having two. This would be about $8,400 a year additionally to the city. Whereas if we sent one out to get tested, it would be $6,000 to $8,000. So we're planning, we could probably do between 6 to 12 in a year. We think if we need that demand, that would cost us to do 6 would cost $36,000 to $48,000 if we send them to a private ELDT trainer. So it's incredibly cheaper to train them ourselves. This also helps us fill demand quickly, and we then have control over the curriculum. So we know that they're being taught exactly how they need to be taught. It also creates a process which promotes fluidity and consistency, allowing the trainees to learn from the trainers and eventually become trainers themselves. And it creates opportunity and job growth for both trainers and trainees if they ever want to move out of the field into a more like instructor or administrative type role. That's all I have for you. Are there any questions?
Beth?
Did I miss it here, or the employees that have their license that possibly could become instructors, will then they be required to get some other kind of certificate to be the instructor?
So in the state of Tennessee, there are no requirements to be an instructor.
Yeah.
I've contacted everybody that I know to contact. The Department of Education, the Department of Motor Vehicles, they're literally, we just have to follow the federal rules. And the federal rules just say you have to have a CDL for 2 years in order to be an instructor.
Now, the reality is we have folks who've been
Yeah.
providing that role for
Yes.
years, and they're very good trainers, they're very knowledgeable. And so this just allows us to formalize that process and have it be, check the boxes
Check
that
the
we needed to
boxes.
check
So
it for the federal
where do we
requirement.
get the curriculum for this?
It was from Clear Roads, a research consortium. I think they're out of Delaware.
Okay.
And so they provide it, they want highway safety.
Yeah.
And so we were able to get that for free. And I've gone through it all, and it meets all of the rules and regulations of the FMCSA.
Okay. So when they do the testing for this, then is this graded internally, or does it have to be sent out to a, a group?
No, ma'am. We have, you take, if you, once you're on the training provider registry, you're in control of everything. But there's the potential for them to come audit you. So you have to ensure that you have assessments of each section. There's a theory section, and then there's a on the road section. The theory section consists of 5 smaller sections, 30 total. And we're going to assess each one of those. And you have to score an 80% or higher on each section.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're going to keep all the record keeping in case federal government ever comes in. We'll have all that to prove that we're abiding by the FMCSA regulations.
So there's testing for the training itself, and then, of course, you have to test for your permit through the state, as Chris had mentioned.
I was going to ask you, is that a
So-
state?
And then you got to go through a driving test with the state as well. So we're just doing, the training portion has some testing requirements along the way as well.
So then they go to the state and they actually do the driving testing through the state.
So this is how I see it going, or we
Yeah.
see it going.
I was just,
You're going to go and you're going to take the theory portion. Theoretically, if you pass the theory portion, you should then be able to go get your CDL permit. Because you have to have a permit before you can do the road portion.
Yes.
The ELDT road portion. So you're going to get your permit, come back, finish the rest of ELDT, and then you'll go back to the state and test. But you have to have that certificate on the training
First.
provider registry that says you passed entry-level driver training before you can take the driving portion of the CDL state
Got it.
test.
okay, thank you very much.
Alderman Potts?
Thank
Got
you,
it.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Question for you. Do you know of any other municipalities that have used a similar program, and can you speak to any of their successes?
So this is all brand new, February 7th of this year. I've heard that Columbia is implementing, but I don't know if anybody's actually doing it right now. pretty much anybody that is an ELDT training provider, they were doing it before, like a truck school. They just had to literally sign up because they already had everything in place. So, but there's been, have you heard of anybody?
I've not heard of any municipality who's finished the process and started training, but I do know that it's being entertained by a number of different communities.
Anybody
you.
else? Gabrielle?
So are we actively advertising for CDL drivers? Is that where we're drawing these people from? Or is it somebody internal that has expressed an interest for that?
So if you're a CDL driver already, you don't have to take this. It's only for people that don't currently have a CDL. So, and
But just the general, is it a general public that we're putting out an ad for?
no,
somebody
ma'am,
that
it's
wants to
only,
be
it's
a
only
CDL?
for employees.
Okay, so it's somebody that's already an employee?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
But they can come be an employee and then get it if they want, which is more incentive.
Yeah. When we go out for hiring new employees, we do work to attract CDL drivers, simply because we don't have to, there's a time sink with that and money as well. But CDL drivers, as Chris had mentioned, it's really challenging to hire these days with rising costs and so on and so forth. So we do have a number of people on city staff who don't have their CDLs have expressed interest in getting them. This would be a path for them to get that training and potentially move up into the organization a little further. So
Another question? No? Yes?
Just, thank you. When you mentioned that, it kind of prompted, how many open recs do we currently have that require CDLs?
I can get that number. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, that's all right.
Okay.
I just jotted down a few things. Department-wise, it would be probably sanitation, streets. What are some other departments
Water and sewer and parks.
Okay,
Pretty much everything that falls underneath the public works.
gotcha. I mean, I feel like this would be a great recruitment tool.
100%.
Especially if, and this is my last question, is there any payback for the employee for the training, or are we absorbing the cost?
So the trainers will get a
Right.
$2 bump in pay.
Yep.
We're going to be paying those going through the training program their regular rate of pay. But so yeah,
So my point is like, say, if you're an employee, you go take it, are we going to pull out of their check to reimburse us for the training?
No. Mm-mm.
That was,
Only if they leave.
The city covers that cost. The other thing, though, the CDL component was very much built into the upgraded pay plan because we recognized how competitive the market is for CDL drivers. So there is, in and of itself, a financial incentive for our team members to get it. And this provides us a clear path to provide it for them. So it really helps on all ends. And as Mark and Chris both mentioned, since it is so competitive, I think it helps us by providing it so conveniently. And you know, we have folks who really understand this and have trained. I think we have one person that's trained almost 100.
99.
99.
99.
So the
Wow.
next one will be 100. One of our people
Yeah.
have already done this with our bringing people up to speed on being CDL drivers.
So we've been doing this. This is just going to make it formal.
understood. Beth?
Yeah, I know we need to move on, but real quick, so you just mentioned something, and I'm curious if it's written down so they know, and for how long of a period. If we train them, they can't just get up and leave, or they have to pay us back, but how long is that period? And is that written down so that is in stone?
Similar to other training that we offer in the city, I think in the fire department, they do EMT training. There's a requirement to stay for a period of 2 years, and there's a kind
That's
of a-
written in there?
that it's not in the program specifically, but we have an agreement that is mirrored off of that.
Yeah.
That
Well, I
existing
would think,
document.
for
So
sure, you
it's-
would make sure that they knew that before they took the training.
Yes, of course.
That's what many other training providers do. You have to sign up for 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
We do something similar with tuition reimbursement when we pay for people's degrees. We do have a period of time we ask them to stay, and if they don't, then there's some payback.
All right, moving on. Item number 2, consideration of ordinance 2022-26, an ordinance to amend the Franklin zoning ordinance and zoning map as part of an annual update, establishing a public hearing on November 22nd, 2022. 2022.
We've talked about this previously, but now it's entering the process we had described when we talked about it previously. The Planning Commission has recommended the zoning ordinance and zoning map updates, and we'll walk you through that and answer any questions you have. So Kelly and Tom are here to do that.
We've had the presentation a couple times now before the work session, so we don't have prepared comments for you, but we're happy to take any questions that you have tonight.
Go ahead.
I've got questions.
Go ahead.
On the scenic corridor overlay, just a general question. I know that Old Charlotte is designated like a heritage road. What does that naturally correlate with the scenic corridor overlay, or is that just part of the area? And then there's the private road that is actually more like a driveway in that same area where Roy Alley is, that actually isn't even a city road. Does the scenic corridor overlay touch that private road by Roy Alley, or help to explain that? There's a lot going on that little road.
There is. When the SCO came through and was adopted back in 2019, we based that on the heritage roads, Envision Franklin, and any missing gaps that there were on those particular corridors that provide scenic view sheds and vistas as you enter into Franklin. That was done back when Old Charlotte was a road that did go through past Mac Hatcher, and it still is that way on the zoning map today.
Awesome.
Patrick?
So a few things. One, the final surety length, there was no deviation from the original surety requirements. I know there was a lot of discussion at Planning Commission about that. It is especially in today's interest rate environment and the economy. I mean, I'll put it this way. I like the intent of the change because I think we're trying to achieve more stability and surety for the city, but also understand the broader economic environment we're in that is going to make this challenging for a lot of our existing project, or will it affect existing, and how will it affect future? Is it still this? Is anything altered after Planning Commission, or is the same surety requirement?
What was proposed through this process and to the Planning Commission is what you see before you today. It includes raising the minimum amount of surety or performance agreement amount, waiting until more of the improvements have been completed before a one-time reduction can be requested, and then increasing that minimum reduction amount. So all of which is to make sure that we have enough funding to be able to complete the improvements that have been promised by a developer on an approved plan.
I guess I'll say this is that like I know there's a public good for this, right, to make this change, but I also know that there are going to be pretty quickly, probably, some real business impacts to folks doing business in the community, and I would just hope that we would be updated. I'd rather hear from staff tracking complaints on those on this change and how it affects the economics of certain things. You know, what we don't want is, more red tape, more hurdles to doing business in Franklin on projects that are good projects. I guess I would like for you all to think about maybe some sort of, over the next year, kind of way to track issues and maybe file complaints, or you're going to get complaints, but you get them now, right? But you see what I'm trying to get at. I really would want to know if this has gone too far, or if we think, how it's really affecting our applicants. And I think you understand the spirit of what I'm saying. Maybe I'm not. You all are the professionals that might could put in a system to track that.
If I may, your questions are valid, and first of all, the assurance that I want to provide you is that the Development Services Advisory Commission, with Alderman Brown sits on, talked about this, as well as with the Development and design professionals. And as Kelly had mentioned, that the purpose of this is to ensure that the infrastructure improvements that a developer is required to put in get completed. And what has happened over time is that developers, some developers, not all, and we track that, take a long time to try to get some of those improvements completed. And that is a cause for concerns, particularly for those residents and property owners that have invested in a residential neighborhood. The intent here is to try to have those improvements completed sooner. And we're going to share other parts of our development process to help encourage that. But also know that with these annual amendments, the purpose is primarily is to make our standards and regulations clearer and more predictable. If we're seeing something that's not working well, we'll be back next year at this time to modify it. But right now, with inflation the way it was, and with the $80+ million in performance sureties, some that have been up there approaching 7 to 10 years, we're concerned that those funds may not, and I say may, and I emphasize because our team does a real good time, we may struggle if a developer decides that they can't finish a project, and then that burden becomes a city. And that's really what we're doing. And these changes we're proposing in the survey that we've done, and Catherine helped with that, surveying some progressive communities, are very similar. We're not doing anything out of the box.
I think just keep a pulse on it, and because we don't want to tie up, because there's a lot of great developers out there who have the financial wherewithal to pay the obligations and aren't going to go out, but we tie up more and more capital, and that just further limits private enterprise. So I think it's a balance, a finesse, but I think the point would be just to monitor it and yeah, I don't want to be a report or anything coming to us, but I think maybe a check-in, at next year's, or even off the record, just individually, just want to keep a pulse on it, because they'll guess who they're going to come to when they're going to be calling everybody up here saying our sureties and da. So and I can't go do another project, another great project in Franklin because I'm tapped out, and interest rates are 7%, and and so it's a balance.
It's
So
not
just-
going to affect existing letters of credit.
Okay,
would we
just
have.
just keep us updated and keep a pulse on that, because that was a major thing that came up at Planning Commission.
I just want to recognize Dr. Kenneth Hill is here with Shorter Chapel, and I know that he addressed the Planning Commission specifically about the rezoning from R6 to Civic Institutional, and that's been one of the things that has been discussed. So I don't know if y'all have any questions for him or if he wants to just address questions, but I didn't want the opportunity to go away. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I do, but I also have a question about the short-term rentals too, if we decided to take that number off, because I think we were all kind of in the conversation that coming up with the exact number of days was so arbitrary and virtually impossible to enforce or follow. We had that conversation before in work session.
Actually, that's why part of the reason we put the number in there was because to make it enforceable. And we stated the maximum number of nights that it could be rented in, excuse me, the rolling 12-month period, because we can't necessarily debate with someone how many nights they stayed in their home, but we can pull records to determine how many nights a short-term vacation rental was rented. And that's why we set that
And those records are where?
online via tax collections.
Assuming that they're doing what they're
Correct.
supposed to do.
Well, then
That's the assumption.
if they're not registered, then they're
Or
operating
if they're
without the appropriate
skipping
permit. And
around, and that's my concern, that not everybody's going to be checking every box that they should be checking, and how are we ever going to enforce X number of days? And at what point are we going to discover, whoops, they're 2 days over their limit? So what do? We go and kick the tenant out of the house? Like, what is our consequence for this?
Then we would issue them the notice of violation for operating their short-term vacation rental in violation of the code. And written in the codes, we have the board, with a presentation to the board based on complaints, we can revoke their short-term vacation rental license.
Okay.
Dr. Hill, if you want to come up, I think Alderman Hanson had a question or comment. One of the two.
I do, and I watched the planning video. Eric was so nice to share with us, and I do know that you approved of this, and I do believe that your property should go in civic institution. But I do have some questions, because I just want to make sure without any doubt that we're all on the same page. So when you came in to file for your zoning change on this, did anybody hand you the sheet that showed like approved uses for CI, for civic institution, when you came in to file your zoning change or request? Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because you have historically significant property that absolutely falls within civic institution and probably works in your benefit to be in that for future grant money and charitable donations for improvement on your property. But at the same time, you have the Bezelia Harris Community Center, which you advertise available for public events and use for a fee, which would be precluded under this zoning. And of all the people out there, I don't want to see anything come back on you where you say, I didn't realize, I didn't know. And unlike African American Heritage Society, they typically use their buildings, particularly Macklemore House, strictly for their own activities and not for outside uses. But when you have a building like Bezelia Harris in a neighborhood that actually needs community gatherings and kids after school or different types of activities, this would not allow that use. And that's where I have asked the city to no response from them, that this actual zoning of civic institution is the very one we need to have events in, because you are a not-for-profit or a church or a school, which these are activities that typically are conducted on properties like that, and also the revenues are greatly appreciated and needed to sustain your organization. But for many, many years, it's not anything new, we have not allowed events on civic institution properties. We've asked for a different type of zoning, and this has come up in the past as well. So I didn't want you to get in this, and then this happen, and you get your zoning change, and then somebody come and say, oh, but you can't do this, and then you didn't realize that you couldn't do this. Because it is very clear, and I've had 2 outside attorneys unrelated to the city of Franklin in any way or any ongoing dealings look at this to make sure that I understood exactly what our codes and laws and zoning meant. And it was very, very specific about this, and I just don't want any remorse or surprises down the line, particularly for you.
Sure. I appreciate that, and no, I was not given that information. But we're just like every other nonprofit religious organization in the city. We have internal events, but we do not do what you're suggesting.
Sure, go ahead.
And I appreciate the comments, Alderman Hanson. Every church in town charges for weddings.
Yeah.
And technically, that is illegal under our code.
I don't think that's accurate. Wedding receptions are part of the wedding.
They do.
It happens.
do.
And it's connected to.
And I'm not
religious
saying, like, I
service or
understand the
sacrament.
spirit of what you're saying, and
Yeah.
but
If I go to a church and rent a space for a wedding, and I'm not a member of that church, it's an event. Weddings are big business.
But-
It's business.
So are you?
We don't
Are
have,
you-
we don't conduct weddings in that. All weddings. Are
I'm so sorry that you're being put in the middle of this.
Oh,
This
no,
is
no.
nothing. This is the first zoning change
Yeah.
that I've seen, that we have looked at the applicant and suggested
Yeah.
that they did not come here and understand the decision they had worked with staff to do. So I'm a little bit perturbed about that. I don't
we've been
think
on
it's
that-
our job
Yeah.
to tell you
Yeah.
or anyone else
Yeah.
our opinion of it. The second thing is, churches charge outside. and if the other aldermen up here are wanting to start a crusade against our religious institutions for charging for outside things, go for it. We're wasting our time on this.
This is where we need to add events
Go.
in the civic institution,
Okay,
Patrick.
well, I think that has absolutely nothing to do with the Shorter Chapel Church or this institution. We should
It
have
does
talked
when
about
their
it.
website is charging
We should
for
have talked
events.
about it on the item before, on the zoning ordinance change. I'm sorry you're having to be subjected to this.
Well, we've been on that,
We need to move on. This is a non-issue.
I'm fine with that. Dr. Hill was here, Patrick, and wanted to answer any questions. We're trying to move closer to getting this passed in one bundle, so.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, Bev.
Let's all take a deep breath here a minute, because I think what I hear Alderman Hanson doing is doing a deep dive, which we're charged to do, and she's concerned because she wants to make sure that you're able to do what you really want to do. And later, not a year from now or another board come back and say, oh, you can't do that, or whatever, because, you know, we've had a couple issues just recently
With churches charging?
with civic institutional. And so I think that's sort of brought it to the forefront because it's fresh in our mind, and we're saying, how does this all work? And, you know, government, we have all these hoops we jump through, and then we have our ordinances and everything else. But I just hear a concern on her part to make sure you're able to freely do what you're going to do. So if staff and our city administrator and our staff can tell us that what you're doing here is, and you have free reign to do the activities, or you can rent it out to other organizations or other groups, other than weddings. Let's leave weddings off the table. I don't care about that. I do care about gatherings and things like that and renting it out. If that's okay, then make sure that that's okay across the board. This is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing Patrick saying, you know, I'm sorry we're throwing you in the middle of this. Well, we're not throwing anybody in the middle of this. It is what it is, and we have it before us, and it deserves a robust conversation because we have an alderman over here wanting to protect you and make sure that you get what you need. And we have somebody else over here, another alderman, who is saying, well, you know, there's nothing new under the sun here, but yeah, there is. It could be. So can we be assured that what we're talking about here gets all wrapped up with the bow on it and we're okay? You know what I mean? That's
Can we amend-
that's where I
can we
think
do-
we are.
So I think that where we split these hairs is when we vote on it. I mean, because we've discussed it at
But
a
we need
lot.
events.
I
We need
agree with
events.
Alderman Hanson, and I
Yeah.
do think we need to, maybe on the zoning rewrite, in the civic institutional, can we add that religious institutions can charge for events?
Events. They can have events.
Will you
Civic-
take that
That's
back
one-
and think,
Or s-
and you
one
don't
of
have to
the
do it on the
things-
spot?
Or civic institution can have events. Can they or can they,
One of
can they or
the
can
things
they
that
not?
we are doing, we also have the definition for place of public assembly
Excuse me.
as part of this zoning ordinance update also.
Yeah.
And one of the things we proposed in this definition, an institution or a facility that congregations of people regularly attend to participate in or hold meetings, workshops, lectures, religious services. And as Eric alluded to, part of that is a staff interpretation.
There you
The
go.
staff interpretation is that a wedding, a funeral, the activities surrounding those events, occurrences, are part of the religious services. As many of us know, churches also make their facilities available for other meetings throughout the week that they're going, it's a staff interpretation of a ministry of the church or an outreach activity of the church as opposed to a commercial operation. So
And in this case, that would be Feed My Lambs or Daughters of the King or the other people that have, been there.
I think there's a
Well,
difference
could be
than
political, too.
a civic institutional use that specifically builds a facility that is meant for an event venue. And if For example, a lot of the discussion around when Franklin Grove was looking at that
Right.
was the size and scale and purpose of that was not just occasional meetings and gatherings, it was a primary use. That's what's different in this case from the way I think we both interpret it and the way this operates in the real world. So I don't know if
Okay,
that
that's
helps. I feel like that might be
Yeah.
the unspoken
Yeah.
parallel that's being drawn here.
Yeah.
And so I'll just put it out. That's why I think that's very, very different what's happening at this church or any church
Mm-hmm.
compared to having a dedicated facility that is an events venue. Because that is not, they're not building an events venue. It's a complementary use to the church. And it may have some things that
Yeah.
could resemble that, but it's not the primary use, and it has a related function to the functioning of the church. So
I think-
again, it's a little bit of staff interpretation. There's always a little room for that.
Yeah, Bev, then we're gonna move on.
Yeah, I think the key that you just said was primary use. Thank you, because we really do need to focus on that. I just want to make sure, that we're all comfortable and we're all clear, because we want people to do what they want to do. We want people to be able to function the way they want to function and not, sometimes, and forgive me for being cavalier about this, but sometimes we get into this stage of interpretation. The staff interprets, and I know that has to happen, but sometimes to me, and I don't mean to be flippant about this, but sometimes it sounds like, well, it's willy-nilly, whoever wants to interpret it. And somebody leaves and we hire somebody else and they have a different interpretation, well, it's, their interpretation. And that's not exactly true because there's multiple people involved in that. But I think that's where sometimes we get in the shade of gray where we go, well, we've interpreted it to be this and thus. Sometimes it's difficult, isn't it? Sometimes, Tom, we've talked about that before.
We endeavor and
I'll
challenge.
be quiet.
I just say, we endeavor and challenge ourselves in every case to be consistent down through the years. And there again, when we find a deviation, what does the code actually say? What is in black and white? And then if we find a deviation, like, okay, we need to go back and reconsider what the code actually says. And we don't, kind of fortunately with the annual updates we have now, you all may recall over the last couple of years that we've done this with home occupations. There have been a couple of questions over the years that have come up. And fortunately, kind of with our annual update, particularly to zoning, it gives us the opportunity to come back to you. You may have a person who's unhappy with how we're interpreting the current code, current zoning ordinance. Like, well, it may be a while, but come back in a few months and we will take this back to the planning commission and the board and evaluate the interpretation and see if we need to adjust what the code actually says in black and white. I don't know if that really answered the question or not. But.
I know, we're at 40 minutes on two items.
You want to discuss this, and I have one more quick question about something else here, and
Good.
it's a yes or no. The buildings and the stories, building of 2 or more stories, the facade is greater than 100 feet, shall be differentiated and appear to compromise, be comprised of 2 or more. That section, it's 4.7.4 C2, you know which one I'm talking about there? Does that also include, okay, you've got a building, and you want it, if it's more than 100 feet, you want it broken up so it doesn't look like one solid building. I get that. What if there's, you know which one I'm talking about? The apartments across from Lifetime. We have multiple buildings. Does that also affect that multiple buildings can't look all the same? You can break up the facade on one building, so you break up the facade on the second, third, and fourth, but you got 4 buildings that look identical. Bad design.
There are requirements for multifamily development, and of course, the one you're referring to occurred prior to the 2019 major update, but the requirement for the facade articulation segmentation is one that breaks up the building, but only applies to commercial mixed-use buildings. So
Only one building, or is it, would it be multiple buildings?
it's the entire structure, if that's,
Well, you've got, this really concerns me. So if we have 4 structures but they're like, all apartments are all mixed use, and you have apartments and you have retail and restaurants in the bottom, whatever. Are all these buildings required to not look identical, like, we got quadruplets here?
Like Oak Glen on Mallory Station.
Yeah, any of these. Because that, we got to stop. We got to stop doing that.
We'll look into that. There are requirements for multifamily buildings, but commercial mixed use doesn't have the same type of standards that the multifamily buildings have.
We have another vote on this, and I know she needs to move on, and I appreciate that, but can you bring that back for our next vote? Or just weigh in on it? Because I'd really be interested in that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3, as we continue to discuss things in triplicate, although this one's very important, we're going to discuss City Hall redevelopment scenarios. Michael Walters Young.
So we shared with you in August sort of a series of scenarios, financial implications related to what we had seen from the commercial development. We also looked at some legal and financial considerations. In September, we shared with you the test fits and kind of the proof of concept around a reduced size from the master plan. And then tonight, we're bringing back really some follow-ups from that initial set of scenarios. We ran some different scenarios related on that, tried to answer a series of questions that came up at the time. And so this is a kind of a follow-up on those items to show you what we have, answer any other questions, and then get any other guidance you have as we continue to move along in considering the City Hall redevelopment project. So Michael's going to walk you through this, and we will be glad to answer any further questions as well.
Good evening on this rather wet night, but we needed the rain. Michael Walters Young, Budget and Strategic Innovation Manager. The outline of our presentation is on the screen and at your places. At your places, you have both the PowerPoint printed off. The only difference between what was in your packets and what's at your places is we changed the date and made one correction to the legal follow-up slide, and I'll review that with you. Also at your places, you have a 20-page 11 by 17 packet, so you can actually read the numbers, because there's a lot of small numbers on some of these. Beginning on page 13 is everything that we presented on August 23rd. So you've got both meetings worth of financial scenarios at your places. Okay. We will briefly touch on follow-ups to legal questions that were raised in the August 23rd meeting, and then spend the bulk of our time on really 3 components. The review of square footage costs at a macro level, 5 scenarios that we've rerun. We're not going to spend a lot of time on a few of them because it's simply the change of 20 to 30-year debt, and we'll go through that. And then a discussion of additional sales tax generation, which we estimate could be generated from the retail properties. And then Eric will close with a formal recommendation. So under legal follow-ups, the first question was, how long can you issue debt for in the state of Tennessee? And that is 40 years. So the request to financially estimate 30-year debt certainly is allowable legally within the state of Tennessee. Second was a question regarding our use of the city's industrial development board in the past. The use of the IDB itself has been limited, and certainly the most significant project with which it was involved in was the Nissan tax increment financing district for the headquarters approximately 20 years ago. The city has used other entities, including our Public Building Authority, as well as the Health and Education Board, to be a conduit provider for nonprofit health and education activities, as well as other public building authorities, namely the Lawrenceburg, in the original packet it said Lewisburg, to issue debt in the first decade of this century. And I don't know if there's any follow-ups, Christine, you want to make on those questions.
And I would just mention that that is certainly our history, but we have paid those bonds off. So we actually paid the issue through the Lawrenceburg PBA matured last year, and it was gone. And then we actually, this board back in the fall of 2019 refinanced the bond issue through the Franklin PBA, and it's back under the city of Franklin now. So we do not currently have any conduit debt that is the responsibility of the city. And of course, as Michael remarked, the TIF loan was paid off. This board approved paying that off early at the end of last year.
All right.
So
Sir.
we have paid off the TIF bond, but we're still paying ourselves back.
Yes,
For how
sir.
long does that last?
That will be just this fiscal year. We will pay the general
So-
fund back.
June 30th, that will be gone also,
Yes, sir.
of
Yes.
next year.
This current fiscal year that we're in now, that will be the final repayment to the city's general fund for the TIF.
Okay?
Fiscal '23.
And so in fiscal '24, what you'll see from a revenue modeling standpoint is an increase in property tax collections that come to the general fund because that obligation has been paid off and now is free and clear to use for general purposes. Switching to the financial scenarios. As a overview, we prepared 5 scenarios to cover various options that you asked us to look at. Those include scenario 1, 2, and 3, which are the same scenario 1, 2, and 3 that we reviewed 6 weeks ago, or actually 2 months ago now. A partial building of 91,000 square feet and a full garage. Scenario 2 is the cost of the full master plan of 115,700 square feet, obviously with a full underground garage. Scenario 3 is the cost of a partial building and full garage, and then a mixed-use office retail building based upon the maximum recommendations from our external consultants, the Gibbs Planning Group that you saw in July. That's approximately 130,000 square feet. Scenario 4 is a partial building of 91,000 square feet with the full garage, and then more limited retail space, which totals 115,000 square feet. So that matches the total square feet in scenario 2. And then scenario 5 is approximately 95,000 square feet, and that is scenario 1 with 4,500 square feet of retail space added, because that would fit within the ability to still issue those bonds tax exempt. If you recall, there's a under 5% threshold that we can meet, still issue them exempt, but reissue them for-profit taxable, have that for-profit taxable purpose contained within the space. And then finally, as I said, we provided square footage cost breakdowns and estimates for local sales tax generation. So let's start with square footage. This is detailed for you in your big packet on page 2. And what we've done is to try to summarize those costs into 5 categories. Hard costs, AKA construction, demolition, excavation, the building of the garage, streetscape, urban parks, and green roof. Soft costs, AKA design, FF&E, I'm sorry, that would be the fixtures, furnishing, and equipment, technology, etc. Design fees, which are, as you would think they are, literally the architectural fees to build the building. Contingencies, which are broken down into 2 categories, and that would be construction contingency and then inflation contingency. And then finally, a temporary relocation amount. This chart on the screen and on page 2 is the summary chart, and it shows that approximately 70% of the total estimates, regardless of the 5 scenarios, are for the hard costs, the construction, the demolition, the garage, etc. Approximately 6%, 6.3% are to outfit the building, aka the soft costs, the furniture, the equipment, the technology. 2% are for temporary relocation costs. We've estimated $2.5 million. It is truly an estimate. We're going to see what we can do and what we can find when we get to that point. And then 13%, the balance, is for inflation and construction contingencies. That's about 3 to 3.5% for the cost of the project contingency, and about 10% for inflation. And talking through, certainly with the architects and with other estimates, we feel pretty comfortable, knock on a piece of wood, that 10% is a reasonable estimate to build on at this point in time. It's a significant amount of money. As you can see, certainly on the next slide, It ranges between 8.2 to over $10.4 million, depending upon the scenario, of a total project that costs between 84 and 107 million. I will pause to see if there are any questions you have regarding the macro level square footage cost.
Matt?
Only just, what's the net total cost? Is that including, what is in that? Scenario one goes from 84 to 117. Is that the cost of the debt in there? What's the, on this, on this sheet, net overall cost? Is that what that other,
Yeah, so that is the financing
that's
charges.
the cost of the debt?
Yeah.
That's
Got it.
correct.
Okay, got it.
That's the all-in.
Just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure.
Yep, and we will, there's a summary slide at the end of these scenarios and the end of the sales tax that shows you the gross and the net costs, both for the 20-year and for the 30-year. Okay. So when we look at the 5 financial scenarios, this slide is unchanged. We have assigned a risk factor guide from low to high regarding our best estimates for the financial and legal risk of each of these 5 scenarios for you. All bonds in these 5 scenarios are issued for 30 years. None of them are issued for 20 years. The minimum City Hall building is assumed to be 91,250 square feet. Nothing like transposition when talking about numbers. That matches the amount reprogrammed for scenario 1. Construction costs for that building, the municipal building usage, are the same amount of approximately $921 per square foot, all in. The full garage is assumed on all 5 of these scenarios. And on the mixed-use development scenario, scenario 3, and then carried over in scenario 4, the estimates for rental assumptions and operating costs are taken almost entirely from the Gibbs Planning Group. The only exception is our estimates for how much it would cost to operate the IDB.
Yeah, and a program manager.
And
costs.
programming the actual management of those vendors. Okay. Scenario 1, we went through on the 23rd of August. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide except to say that at the bottom, we have added a breakdown slide for scenarios 1, 2, and 3. The total cost increases by $15,525,000 to issue it over 30 years instead of 20 years. The annual cost goes down to the city by approximately $1.175 million. There's a trade-off there because, of course, you're issuing the bonds for longer. You have more time to pay them off. But you're still paying, I would argue, significantly more, $15 million, over the course of those 30 years. Okay?
Over the total amount borrowed, how much? I mean, if you're doing the 30 versus the 20 and you're paying $15 million more, how much are you totally borrowing?
So we would borrow on that scenario,
69 million. Okay.
69,
you'd borrow $69 million. The total cost would be $117 million all in.
okay?
So you take out 15 million in cash from that 117, so you'd be borrowing $69 million over 30 years, which would cost you that net of $102 million.
All right.
Okay. Scenario 2 is the full master plan. Again, the only difference on this slide is that it is being issued for 30 years instead of 20 years. That costs you $20.6 million more over a 30-year life cycle of issuing the debt instead of a 20-year, but your annual savings are approximately $1.5 million to $1.6 million. So again, greater annual capacity, but it costs you more in the end. That's for the 115,700 square foot building. Scenario 3A. Now if you remember 2 months ago, we gave you scenario 3A and 3B. 3A was the one that had a lower per square foot cost for the retail and office space because we would not be the ones paying to outfit that space. That would be the private entity that would be interested in occupying it. This slide is absolutely unchanged. It's still scenario 1, except it's issued for 30 years for the municipal space. This slide, the only thing that's changed is your total financing cost. It's still $607 per square foot. Your cost per square foot financially, of course, has gone up. Overall, this scenario from a mathematical standpoint looks significantly better. There's two reasons for that. The first is you are issuing it over 30 years, which means you're able to collect rents for 10 additional years. So your cost increase from 20 years to 30 years is approximately $3 million. Your annual savings is $1.5 million. All of the risks that are inherent with this scenario are, of course, still there. The assumption that you would be able to keep occupancy at 95%, that you would have the annual increase in rents, and we kept those scenarios exactly the same. 2% increase in revenues, 2% increase in expenses. We have also added our best estimates for sales tax generation from the retail components in scenarios 3, 4, and 5. And I'll walk you through those numbers in a moment. Keep going? Sure. Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Bless you. Scenario 4 is our first of two new scenarios. So scenario 4 is to build the same size building, 115,700 square feet, as was proposed on the master plan. But instead of having a mix of office and retail, the balance of 24,000 square feet is purely retail. That seemed to be the overall interest and direction from the majority of you when we last met, to see what retail would produce in this area. This has a higher cost per square foot and a higher financial cost per square foot because you're not generating as much rent because you have less square footage. Instead of issuing 38,000 square feet and collecting those rents, and the Gibbs assumption was that the office rents would be higher than the retail rents, we're building less square footage over the course of time, and it's retail only, which was $10 per square foot less in their rental assumptions to start with. All other estimates are the same, the 2% increase year over year on expenses and revenues. This would result in an additional revenue requirement of approximately $14.5 million, and it would result in a payback of approximately 47 years in order to pay the city back. Finally, scenario 5 is a building of 95,750 square feet. That is the 91,250 with 4,500 square feet of additional retail space. This would result in a payback of 38 years, but it's only $2 million more that you need to do this because it's a very small increment of additional space that you're adding. We assumed that the cost per square footage would be the same as scenario 1 because, again, the city would be outfitting this, so I did not lower it to 607. It's small. We'd figure that out. It's very incremental.
Yeah.
You can see
Minimal.
the annual increase in property tax would be 0.0009 in order to cover that $2 million over the 30 years. Okay. Those are the 5 scenarios. Before I pause, let me run you through our estimates for sales tax. So the first thing to point out when it comes to estimating how much sales tax you would generate is that when you go to the store and you buy something, you're charged 9.75%. But the city of Franklin does not receive 9.75%. We receive 1.375%. 7% goes to the state of Tennessee outright, and you can talk to TML about possible changes to that and caps from 1,600, 3,200. I bet you're going to hear about that next cycle. 1.375% goes to Williamson County and for public schools, and then the balance comes to us. So we had to come up with an estimate to try to get to this. It's really impossible to come up with a concrete, this is how much you would generate, because we don't know what retail, we don't know what office. So what we did, we thought was logical enough. We took the unaudited total local sales tax option sales tax collections from fiscal 22, which were $57.7 million. We divided it by our estimated total retail square footage in the community, and that's backed up by the Gibbs report. This may be a little low, but it's in a reasonable ballpark of 7.5 million square feet of retail space between Cool Springs, between downtown, between West Haven and Berry Farms and Parkway Commons and all of the various commercial areas in town, to get an estimated per square foot sales tax generation from retail of $7.70. However, you can't use that number. And the reason you can't is this funny little thing called the intranets and online sales. Because local option sales tax collected by the City of Franklin includes both brick and mortar and online sales. So you will find noted in here that we did research, and the best we could find as a reliable standard is from the second quarter of 2022 from the United States Census Bureau of estimated total e-commerce sales in the country. And the average in the country is 14.5% of total retail sales generated by e-commerce. Now, obviously that's an average nationwide. Franklin is undoubtedly different, but we don't have Franklin-specific data. This was
Likely higher.
Likely higher. I'll freely admit that. Which would, of course, lower the amount shown on the screen generated from brick and mortar. But it's a defensible estimate because that I can tie you back to. That would result in the average local sales tax generated per square foot at brick and mortar sites, $6.58. Okay? So for each of the three scenarios on the screen, scenario 3, 4, and 5, you can see what the average annual sales tax generated today would be by adding that amount of space to this project. About $112,000 in annual sales tax for scenario 3, about $161, if you will, $1,000 for scenario 4, and $29,600 for scenario 5. Now, the reason why scenario 4 is larger in sales tax generation than scenario 3 is because we are only assuming sales tax generated from the retail usage. Office may or may not have sales tax generated. We also looked at other possibilities in terms of business tax. That, of course, goes 100% to the state. State shared taxes is based upon population, not in a formulaic, not on business activity. So, in summary, the financial scenarios are on the screen. What we did was to break this out in two ways. The first was to show each of the scenarios and the additional annual revenue needed. Scenario 1 remains that we can afford it within our current financial model. That remains unchanged. Scenario 2 would be an additional $1.80 per year that we would need to generate for a subsidy. Scenario 3 would be 27 cents, scenario 4, 68 cents, and scenario 5, 9 cents. We thought it important, though, to juxtapose the table below, which is to show you the overall costs of the building, which is column A, and then the 20-year net, or gross and net, and then the 30-year gross and net, accounting for all estimates for rents, and all estimates for taxes generated, and then the additional total revenue needed between the 20-year and the 30-year scenarios. I've laid a lot of numbers at your plate. I'm going to pause and drink some water and see if you have any questions before we move on to a recommendation.
Anybody? Okay, you want to hear from Eric? Your turn.
Go on to the next. So I'm kind of still back to the recommendation I gave you a month or so ago as we look at this, because the fundamentals are still the same. This allows us, scenario 1, to meet the goals set out in the master plan, identified in the master plan, both for growth in the organization, growth in the community, the service needs, but we do it on a footprint of a building that's 24,000 square feet less, roughly. and about 20-some, close to $24 million less in cost. So I think that's significant. And the fact that we can meet what are the foreseeable programmatic needs and service operational needs of the organization. Provides for growth, but it preserves capacity to do other projects, other needs that we have in the community. Doesn't require you to be in a situation where you've got a pressure to adjust your property tax rate or any of those kind of elements. It lives within your means and preserves capacity to do other things that will come your way, undoubtedly. And we'll build a building we'll be proud of and will fit our square. And in this scenario, too, you don't have the extended payback that you have associated with the blended use that you have in the others. They just don't pay their way. And we have anywhere between 18 to 47-year payback periods in those areas where we tried to incorporate the other uses. So I think when you look at all of that as a whole, and you stay focused on what our core function is, and what our identified needs are, I really believe that still remains your strongest and best option. We need to hear from you. We want your guidance. This is at the stage or the crossroads in the project. We had identified through the contract the efforts to evaluate and provide data on the commercial uses. We also had the component of doing the test fits and kind of this reduced footprint building plan. We've done that work. And now the next phase is to go into the actual schematic design, but we need to know what we're designing. So that's where we need your guidance and any other data or information you need or follow-up you need. We'd love to hear that and help provide that for you, and really need your direction on if you're ready to move into that phase with this scenario or some variation of it or some other scenario. We're looking for that guidance and want to help you with what you need to make those decisions.
Matt
Thank
has
you.
his hand up. Thank you, Eric.
Three things I remain confident about. We need a new city hall. It should be on a square. I'll double down on that. And the work, Christine and Michael, that you guys do, I feel very confident in. No question whatsoever in the forecasting and in the estimate that you've done. The more I've thought about this, I'll be honest with you, I'm longing for the days we were talking about a 75,000 square foot building at a much lower cost. If I could turn back time, not to channel share here, but I would take that vote a long time ago and get this done and be back where we were. I can't stomach spending over $100 million on a new city hall. I can't. I just can't do it. I don't think I can go face people and do that. We need roads. We need intersections. We need trails. We need parks. We need ultimately a new water treatment plant, which is, significant cost. I can't see spending the same amount on a water treatment plant that we would on a city hall, and taking monies away from the things that I'd love to be walking in this room on a regular basis with opportunities for us to put that money to use to the benefit of citizens in a bigger way. I just can't do it. I guess that leaves us with scenario one, probably for me, and on the 20-year, because it's about the only scenario that gets us to a number that I can probably stomach, knowing that we need to do it. I would love nothing more than to see us shrink this down a little bit further. I'd love nothing more to be down at 75, 80 square foot and make it work. Look at our collective facilities that we have and see how we could do that. I would love nothing more than that. I'd love to get this just a little bit down, even a little bit further, so that overall net cost fell under $100,000. I would be thrilled with that solution. I don't know if that's possible. I know you've worked really hard on the program of this, but it would be a much easier vote for me to see us do that. But in the scenarios provided, I suppose I'm sitting on scenario one, just given we need to do it, and it's probably the best one from a tolerability perspective, from my perspective. So that's my 2 cents.
Next, anyone? Gabrielle?
I'll speak. I'm with Matt. I wish it was smaller. I wish there was a way to, but I do understand the need to maybe bring more people under one roof at the same time, and also planning for the future. But I also don't think least expensive is always the best. I definitely think scenario 3 and 4 and even 2 are too aggressive, especially in the market that we're in, and we don't have a foreseeable future where this is going to ease any. But I do like scenario 5 because it activates a public portion. We'd still have some room for a parkway, green space, but it activates people to want to participate even in a passive manner with City Hall. Maybe they'll come around the door and come to a meeting or do something else, pay a water bill instead of going online or automatic draft, and engage themselves with the City Hall so it becomes a little more personal than just a bathroom stop, but they actually make us a destination. And I do see it's a moderate, it's a tiny bit of money more, but I think the long term, our investment in that could pay off handsomely once we do have our debt paid down on that. It would be a continual revenue flow long after our debt's gone, and I think that's a good benefit for our taxpayers and our citizens. So I'm leaning towards 5.
Clyde?
You mentioned basis for City Hall. So what is your definition of basis for City Hall?
I'm not sure, basis?
You mentioned that the basis for City Hall.
Okay. Well, I'm really looking at the master planning process we
Right.
went through, which went department by department and said, here's what you have today in terms of staffing and function and public interaction. And then we had folks look somewhere roughly 20 years out and say, what other staffing needs do we reasonably foresee? And so that's the basis of the master plan is the foreseeable future and staffing needs, space needs for service to citizens. And that was what generated the $115,000 to begin with, and then we revisited it because of the new financial reality we were staring at. And originally we threw the $80,000 number out as a way to preserve $20 million of capital investment capacity while we met the needs of City Hall. And essentially, it's not even meeting halfway. We ended up using about $11,000 above that to meet the needs that were identified in the master plan, and bring that cost down. We've been fortunate in that the way we performed closing out the last fiscal year brought more cash into the equation, so we're able to reduce what we would have to borrow and had a little more capacity. So it helped support building a little larger than the 80,000, but we took 24,000 square feet and nearly 24 million off of the cost of the project to bring it within our means. So that's what I'm looking at, and I'm looking at that in particular, that it still meets what was identified as the service needs, both staffing and city services to our citizens, operational needs that were identified in the master planning process in a smaller footprint.
Well, you mentioned 24 million. It's ironic if you take the garage off that the original estimate for City Hall was 24 million. Ironic that we took 24 million off of the price that we've got today, but the original one was 24, and $8 million for the garage. So it was 32 million total. I've asked, and I've I haven't heard anything back. I've asked to understand the function of City Hall, because I don't think the function of City Hall 10 years from now, 20 years from now will be what it was 20 years ago. And I don't think, and I could prove me wrong, I mean, that's all you've got to do. I don't think you have the foot traffic in City Hall now, with City Hall business, that you would have had 10 years ago. And Gabrielle said something about having somebody come in and pay their water bill instead of having, going online. I dare say we probably encourage people to go online and pay it. We don't necessarily encourage people to come down here and pay the water bill down here. We encourage them to go online and do their plans, their building plans, and ask for their permits and do all of that. I don't see City Hall doing what it's done in the past. And I could be wrong. I mean, I have no way of knowing the future, but my guess is as good as anybody else's guess on something like this. If I was totally locked in, and I can't double down on the location, because I've not doubled down on the location. At any time there's been a comment made, I have said this is not the right location for it. But I can live with that. I mean, if the rest of the board thinks this is where it needs to be, I can certainly live with that. But scenario one is the closest that I would get to agreeing to one vote to put City Hall here and for the cost it's going to be. I'm not going to put that commercial space and all the other space. I think that's, well, first off, I don't even think that's the government's responsibility. But that's still okay. But I would probably be able to live with scenario one, not comfortably, you know. It's a little nervous there. But, and the second thing is, I want to make sure that when we do the funding and all this other stuff, that we understand that a new wastewater treatment plant doesn't have anything to do with this. Does not have anything to do with this. So we could spend, what do we need, 150 million on another wastewater treatment plant, and it will not have anything because it's totally separate funding for both. Okay, so I mean, I'll look at scenario one. I'll look in now and tell you, you know, we had an opportunity when we first started out to look at some other options. We so narrowly focused in and so zero focused in on this, that this is the only option that we ever had. We have been presented in the past with other options. We've had public-private partnerships. They went away. The economy drove them away. So we've had opportunities to do this. This City Hall, we looked at City Hall in 2008, 2007. So City Hall being built is not something new. But anyway, scenario one is the closest that I would get to support.
Beth?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat all the things that were said because there's a lot I agree with here and a lot I still have questions about. But, you know, I'm leaning towards scenario 5, then 1. You can take off 3 and 4 altogether. I'm not interested in those. But I think one thing, and there's so many things that can be said here, and I know we need to probably wrap some of this stuff up, but I think we have to remember, too, that we're a growing city. We are not going to be shrinking anytime soon unless some disaster happens that we don't know about. People keep moving here, and the projections of our growth are pretty astronomical in my book. I'm like, wow, that's almost hard to swallow. So we're going to be getting a lot more residents. We're expanding. The county is expanding. The area, Middle Tennessee, is expanding. So we have to keep in mind that we're going to be having new residents, new businesses, new taxes, everything else that are going to be feeding into our system as it naturally would be. So we can't forget that because there is going to be growth. And I do think, I agree, Clyde, that it's not the job of government to, you know, run retail or anything of that nature, but it is fine if we do a space that we're not using, and it can be outfitted to bring other revenue into our city, our sales tax, services for our people, restaurants, coffee shops, retail of some sort. I'm not interested in putting office here. I think that's a killer right there. But I do think there is a place for retail in this building. Totally hands-off by the government. It's just our space. We have a company that runs that. We just get the money in. We don't even bother with it. That's because that's how that operates in other cities that have other spaces. So anyway, we have to keep in mind we're going to grow. And I would say right now I'm leaning to 5. And then if that's not the case with other board members, it'd be 1.
Patrick?
So a few things. I think it's, again, appreciate staff, fantastic job. It strikes me that every option other than the recommended option comes with a tax increase.
That's the way it is.
Well, I think there's, but yet it's $20 million more than the original financial capacity that we were said we had. So, I mean, appreciate it, but it's just, to Clyde's point, we have been steered to some degree in directions. We also, in one of those, I'll reserve those comments because of time. But I will tell you, I think number 5 is the way to go. I'm against, obviously, government being involved in the private sector, but we have in retail space. But we have an obligation to to shepherd the property that we have on America's, I guess, according to Money Magazine, 20th favorite Main Street. I don't know. But that was, for the public, that was a stat last week that we all got to laugh about. But we have a responsibility to shepherd the property that we have, the sense of place that our downtown has on the square. I mean, this is a huge responsibility. And so even though, and when you think about it like this, if you replace one large block of building with, now granted, you could do some parks or little pocket parks and a fountain and call that activation. But if we replace one long unactivated building with another long unactivated building, we're going to have the same kind of feeling on this block. And so what I would say is that option 5 provides some flexibility for the design team to work in some creative flexibility for them to work in some possible activations along 3rd Avenue that would create a sense of place. And it may be a couple of small nooks of retail. I would question some of the assumptions in here. On the financial model, that we're charging $1,000 per same, and you mentioned this, Michael, that we've got the assumption of 1,000 a square foot for that extra 4,500 square feet, but really it's probably going to be the 600 that the other group told us that the retail build out was going to be. So that's going to be, I'll tell you, it was going to be cheaper than $1,000 a square foot. It's going to be with the consultant we paid to tell us how much it was. It will be the 600, so let's put that number in there, and that's going to lower our overall down by $1.1 million. So we're now at 900,000. We've got furniture, fixture, and equipment assumed in that scenario, which is about 370,000, which we're not going to need the furniture, fixture, and equipment in the retail space we're leasing out. We've got about 500,000 in design fees for that $4,500 square feet. I don't think we're going to require $500,000 in design fees for that extra 4,500. Although I think it could be baked in. And then the rent assumption is 35 a square foot. And the Adams group, or what is the group? Gibbs group. The Gibbs group assumed $45 a square foot for retail.
Reverse. Office was 45, retail was 35.
Thank you for
That's
the
where
correction.
the 35 cents.
So scratch that. But nonetheless, I do think there's some refining on 5 and 1 that could be done. And maybe the next meeting we have, we look at those. I think we look at option 5 is it's going to provide us some flexibility in the design phase on creating a sense of place. Not that we're going to have a 4,500 square foot block of retail, and what are you going to do with that? So those would be my comments. The other one would be why the IDB on option 5. I thought the whole point of this, and let's not answer that right now, but maybe offline. There shouldn't be an IDB, but there's IDB sales tax on option 5, page 9. So maybe we look at that.
So that should not be labeled IDB. That's, if you look at the rest of the table below, obviously you can tell these are templates.
I recognize.
Right. That's just a labeling issue. So the IDB is not at all considered
because I thought we
for
were trying to get
scenario
away
5.
from that. On that, that was the hope. Perfect. All right. So I think maybe the next meeting is 5. For my opinion, is 5 and 1. I echo the size. Would love. Sometimes the best diet is just buying smaller pants. Maybe we just say, maybe we just we look at what can we.
In a good way.
But I mean, we're gonna. I spoke to a wise constituent yesterday about this issue. If you build it, you're gonna fill it. And actually, Bob Raver in the crowd here worked for Dollar General HR, people person. But he, if you build it, you're gonna fill it. So I don't know if that's 10,000 square feet on this 5, but I think you're hearing from the board that the size, we feel like there's some space there. How that looks on how we get there and how we come to that decision, I don't know. But I think you're hearing that we all want maybe, and I don't know if we could put our finger, because we've been so removed a bit from the details of the process of the programming, where we know where that would come from. But I think that's the feeling. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Sam?
Just of these, scenario 1 would be my choice out of this.
Jason, you have something to say quickly? Sorry. Last man gets the shortest time.
I'm done.
All right, thank you.
No, in all seriousness, I think that as I look around, number one, thank you again for all the hard work that you guys put in. Number two, I look at other city halls, I don't see the retail component of that, and that's what concerns me. However, I do see the need to activate additional space downtown. I do like the ideas when I think of other government buildings. I like seeing the open space around those government buildings. And so there is that give and take right there. I agree with what Alderman Brown said. City Hall needs to continue to be located in the heart of our city, right here. And I'm leaning right now on scenario 1 and scenario 5 in that order. And what's keeping me there is it's going to take us 38 years to pay off scenario 5 versus 30 on scenario 1. And also, even though it's a slight increase, if the numbers showed correct, it was 0.00009 of an increase on 5. That sounds palatable here in in this area, but it's something I've really got to think about. I do not think that we're going to see increased traffic when it comes to utilities in our city. I don't think that we're going to have, I'm sorry to disagree on this, but I think you're going to see more people on their mobile devices using their tablets, and there's not going to be a need to come in and pay your utilities here. All right? I think we're going to have an app on that faster than we need it. Needed it yesterday. So just to close again, mine is scenario 1 and then scenario 5, and I'll do continue to do my research on the retail component of it.
Okay, Matt, really quickly, and then Clyde. And when it is 6:30, I'm cutting you off.
Understand.
Hurry.
In terms of guidance, cut enough square footage to get rid of that 0.0009 implication on sales tax. I could probably buy into number 5 pretty quickly. I do like the idea of activation. Get rid of any implication of sales tax coming back, increase coming back to our residents. I could buy into 5.
Clyde?
Since we're giving you guys two different scenarios, I'd like to see all 5 of them redone again.
Okay, we're not going to keep up with jokes.
I can do 5. I could buy, but I would prefer 1.
Thank you for the feedback. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Christine. Michael? All right, item number 4, consideration of resolution 2022-46, a resolution approving a development plan for the Optima Franklin PUD subdivision for the property north of Cool Springs Boulevard and east of McCatcher Memorial Parkway at 211 Cool Springs Boulevard. Guidance on required road improvements and road impact fee agreement. Welcome back. Paul, Vernon, and Adam.
Yeah, we're following up on the discussion last meeting. I think we have a couple just real quick slides to show you that maybe specify some of what we talked about last time, a little more detail. I think, Vernon, are you going to lead it off?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to move quickly.
'Cause the
respectful
applicant-
of time, and then the applicant, if they had to add to it. To give some overview, our goal when working with the developers who are investing in our community is give them the guidance so they can make a decision, first of all, whether or not to invest, but also what they are investing in the community as far as what they're asking us for. And as I mentioned previously, it is extremely rare that you see me here talking about road impact fee agreements. The majority of the time, Jimmy, Paul, and Adam have those already completed and actually signed by the developer when they appear with the development plan on the voting meeting. So I'm here to try to help walk through this, and hopefully you can appreciate the urgency, because we can't bring the development plan and rezoning forward until we have the road impact development agreement. The TIA, our traffic impact analysis guidelines, provide very clear direction but they are guidelines. And that's where Paul, Adam, and Jimmy work with developers and their traffic engineers to reach conclusions. But they are our guidelines. And they're even clearer when we have failing intersections that are meeting a level E of an F. And that's what we're talking about in the Cool Spring and other areas of our community. And we talked about that in Cool Springs. It's ripe for redevelopment. There are a lot of surface parking lots, valuable property that we're likely to see in the years ahead. Property owners looking to increase density, which increase vehicular traffic, which brings these conversations even more to light, because as we know, in our biannual citizen surveys, traffic is the #1 concern. Out of everything else that we're rated excellent on, the concern is about traffic. So I want to go to the slide which I had shared last time and get through that quickly, and then certainly have time to ask Paul and Adam some questions. But the options that we laid out to you before was to have Optima improve both intersections that we had talked about at Cool Springs Boulevard and Mallory Lane, and McEwen Drive and Mallory Lane. And they would do that at them cost if you so choose. And that's roughly an estimated cost of about $2.95 million. And there's an eligible factor I'll get into that's eligible for an offset to be reimbursed. The second option that I shared is just to ask staff to create capital project sheets, and we would discuss those when we discuss prioritizing and funding the list of capital projects, which we have dozens, if not over 100 projects to look at, to prioritize and fund. Number 3 is don't require the Optima team to make any improvements to either intersection. And just realize that they're impacting the intersections, as all development will, whether it's as large as the Optima team is proposing as far as entitlements, or a future development that would have lesser density. But number 4 gets to the recommendation that staff felt was appropriate, is to combine the arterial road impact fees that the Optima team is expected to pay based on their proposed entitlements and their development plans with other non-obligated arterial road impact fees, and then have the Optima team manage the construction to only the intersection at Mallory Lane and Cool Springs Boulevard, which includes the I-65 on-ramp. And to share what that looks like from a financial standpoint, because you all asked, is that one of the illustrations I shared, the intersection at Cool Springs Boulevard and Mallory Lane, at this early stage, we haven't getting into really estimating what the cost would be, is expected to be about $2.4 million. The anticipated road impact fees that the Optima team would pay for the proposed entitlements are a little bit north of $1.5 million. They've agreed and they understand that there needs to be improvements that are being required of them immediately in front of their development at McEwen Drive and Cool Springs Boulevard. And of that, we found that we would reimburse them for the right-of-way that they would dedicate, and based on right-of-way costs, it would be about $890,000. So, based on the $1.5 million they would be obligated to pay in arterial road impact fees, they would be eligible to receive the cost based on an appraisal, and we think that'll be about $890,000 they would be eligible to have returned to them. Meaning there's about $676,000 left of the arterial road impact fees that, if the board decides to contribute to the improvements at Mallory Lane and Cool Springs Boulevard as staff is recommending, and putting about $1.7 million towards that, asking the Optima team to manage those improvements that that would equate to about the $2.4 million it would take to complete those improvements. Now, as I mentioned, the TIA guidelines provide guidance on mitigation, and that's what Adam, Jimmy, and Paul do, reducing density, using other strategies to improve the intersections. But that's how we, as a city team, arrived at this recommendation. Michael Walters-Young, as you just heard, we talked about the non-obligated arterial road impact fees that aren't part of any capital project funding is about 3.8 million. So that 1.7, give or take, is available for you to put towards a project that will significantly impact a lot of citizens and visitors in the community. Finally, before I turn it over, is that the Optima team did express some reluctance in making the improvements. And we can agree to disagree. We work with developers all the time. They're making similar improvements right in front of their development that translate to what's going to be done at Mallory and Cool Springs. They're going to hire a contractor, and we really don't agree that there's any difference in making those improvements. We would help them with any permitting through TDOT to expand an on-ramp, which was just done similar by the Drury Hotel at McEwen Drive. They did bring up an option that to pay additional arterial road impact fees. Well, that's not codified in our municipal code, so we're reluctant to have that as an option.
Say that again, please. Say that last one.
So our road impact fee is based on a framework that's based on the type of use and vehicle generated, and there's a fee associated with the type of use and size of the building. What the Optima team has offered to do is that based on their traffic study, and I don't have the exact details, that it increases their impact by 1.7%. If they translate that into additional road impact fees, what I'm assuming that based on the 1.5 they would pay and take 1.5% of that, it's somewhere between $22,000 to $25,000, which really doesn't make a difference on trying to maintain a certain quality of life for their citizens in our community. But it's not codified into our road impact fee ordinance, and we hesitate to, as staff, to encourage you to allow additional funds to be contributed, because then we're getting into a negotiation, which our standards should be clear and predictable, which they are. Granted, we have failing intersections, and with the subjectivity of traffic, where it comes from, the area, this is subjective, but we have had these conversations in the past and always have been we're able to work them out. I would ask Paul and Adam if there's anything else to add.
Matt, I would like to, because I think last time the applicant got cut short, if it's okay, because we are up against time, there's young little men in yellow outfits outside.
I think it's brown.
I know. But if Cameron Bean wants to come up and any of his people, just say your name and introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hey, good evening. Scotty Burnick, landscape architect with Reagan Smith, here on behalf of NHC in Flournoy. I'll say buckle up. I'll try and get through this in about 3 minutes, and my math will be less complex than item 3. We obviously have significant concern with the option 1 and option 4 due to our minimal impact at that intersection. We're 1.5% of an impact. In addition, the financial and the timeline uncertainty is extremely concerning. We have sort of rough estimates Until we do full due diligence, full survey, we really don't know how accurate those numbers are. We mentioned inflation environment, that's obviously a concern for us as well. Paying the overage whenever that inflation goes above, how do we capture that once BOMA sets this exact number? Financing due to the unknown risks and the scale of the project, right-of-way acquisition, major utility relocations, and then permitting her to probably could get a little assistance there. Our current proposal, we haven't talked about directly in front of us. Only want to quickly hit on that. We're looking at sort of two intersections, one extremely small, Mission Court, Cool Springs Boulevard, and McEwen. Our improvements there is $2.6 million. Per the offset of the $890,000, we essentially have $1.7 million that we're sort of pushing towards that. In addition, there's the 1.05 of collector, which everybody would do, but it's still a number. Option 4 obviously would require us, extensive management, maintenance, traffic control, the timeline, the overage on the cost, the overage on the construction, utilities, et cetera. So there's obviously, from a management, it's more than just that. I think in the spirit of fundamental fairness and, proportionate responsibility, yes, we have requested, in addition to all of our arterial and collector fees and the improvements we're doing, to offer a proportionate share of what we're actually doing at that intersection. Understanding there may not be a technical way to offer that based off of what Vernon said, perhaps we can request less of our offset agreement. So if instead of requesting $880,000, we take our percent out of that and minimize that down. So again, I think there's some options. We're here tonight. We obviously need your leadership and guidance so that we can sort of move to the next step and appreciate your time.
Mr. Bean?
Yeah, I'm Cameron Bean with Flournoy. I don't have anything to add. I know we're tight on time, and I think Scotty summarized it very well. So we're hopeful for some direction tonight. So thank you.
Okay, I've got Matt first and then Beth.
I'll try to go quick. I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I did watch it twice. I know.
dedication.
It's 2.5 hours of my life on the way to get back. But it was important to do it because I think I would have walked into that meeting much like many of you, maybe not understanding the full picture. I think everybody learned a lot through that session. I have one clarifying question, and then I'll make some comments. On the option 3, just to clarify this, option 3 and option 4 are exactly the same money-wise. It's just a matter of who's managing the project, right? Because they're still going to pay the impact fees. Is that right? And so you're really looking at, is that not right?
No, that's wrong.
2 and 4.
No, 3 and 4.
3 and 4 are not the same.
No.
What's the difference in, they're still making impact fees, right? I'm sorry, I'm struggling with what 3, what's the difference on the money on 3?
Well, the money's the same, but it's
Yeah.
really the cost of the city able to deliver a project.
Right.
Going through our
It's the
procurement
management.
process based on
Yeah.
private, which we know for a fact, historically, private development has been able to deliver those same improvements for less
Understood.
money.
But the money's the same, it's just the management difference.
Do you mean 2 instead of 3?
No.
Or
3, as I understand it, means we're not asking them to do any
They
additional.
don't do
im-
anything
They
other
pay-
than what's in
improvement.
front
They
of
still
their
pay their
place.
impact
They
fee.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry, yeah, I got confused with
So I'm saying the
two.
money is
Yeah.
the same in 3 and 4. It's just it's the difference between the city managing it in 3 and Optima managing it in 4, right?
Option 2 really spells out that the city will manage it. We create a capital project, and then the city manages it, and we deliver it. Option 4 is.
2 and 3 are incredibly similar in that way because the money's still the same on 3. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll move on. Here's my comments just out of the sake of time. I didn't understand that whole 1 mile thing for the longest time, and I thought that seemed like a really big stretch for this development to make improvements that far away. I appreciated the explanation that there's actually a trigger in our process that says, hey, if you have this many, and we actually increase that number to give a little bit more flexibility, that it's going to trigger that. And that made, unfortunate to these guys, but that does make sense to me. This is a big development. It is a big development, and it's much more sizable than the ones we've had. There does need to be an effort here from a large development to take care of those things, and I understand now why we say a mile away when you have something that significant coming into place. What I wasn't clear on, I did not know that safety detail. Adam had made the comment in that meeting that we have a responsibility to solve a safety issue before we keep approving additional density and improving different additional developments. I think that lends itself to this conversation about who's going to manage this project. I would ask the question, if the city manages this project, how long do they have to wait to build the development? Because we need to solve the problem before we go putting in a new development. We need to solve that problem. At least you'd be in control of your own destiny if you manage the project to be able to deliver it in a way that allows you to keep building the property. At least that, based on Adam's comment about our responsibility on a safety issue, at least on that one intersection, I understand that comment now, and I get why that would be important. I also really appreciated your comments, Vice Mayor, about sort of understanding those left turn. I couldn't figure out why we were fixing left turn lanes and all of that, and I appreciate the fact that it's because of certain movements delaying. I get why that now is an impact. So my point in all that is I understand now why we're where we are, why we have the ordinances that we have, and I understand why large development should be contributing to all that. At the end of the day, this then comes back to really just a question of who's going to manage this project or not. I mean, I really do feel like that's really the only question left. Maybe not for you guys, but for me, it's about who really should manage this project. It needs to get done. And I'll add this element on this. You know, you've got Mac Hatcher reopened since that study was done in 2019. Mars building will get refilled. I know that the retail at 100 Cool Springs is potentially about to get filled. Wind Cross, there's some office buildings that's about to get a new tenant. There is quite a bit going to be refilled, not to mention new development that's coming, the 2 projects that are already developed. I guess where my final answer on this would be is I do think it's somewhere, and I think you said this in the meeting, it's probably a 2 and 4. Because here's my concern. Just simply addressing what they're doing and those couple of changes to those intersections seems incredibly short-sighted to me. We're going to get it back to a E, which is still failing, still going to be red, maybe it'll be improved, but yet we still have much more coming. And I avoid Cool Springs like the plague. It is not enjoyable to go there. I don't care if it's noon, PM, or AM. It is not enjoyable to drive through there. I really think we should take this up in CIP. I think we should be looking at these intersections. I think we should be thinking about how Mac Hatcher is contributing to Franklin Road, Mallory Station, Cool Springs. All of that has changed significantly. I think we should be looking at the additional development when these buildings refill retail and office. And I think we ought to go a couple steps further. What do we do to get that back to a D? What additional lane, to your point about, I think you made the comment, Paul, about we don't want to keep doing this incrementally along the way. If this is our greatest pain point, let's go fix it. Let's really understand it. And I'm moving this beyond their development at this point to say, if we're going to go do it, and we're going to put in capital funds anyway, can we go one step further? Let's get it to a D. Let's make a couple other lane changes. Let's make a couple other adjustments to it. And we'll continue to collect impact fees from developments as they come to pay ourselves back for that work that we're going to do to make that whole situation better. I'm at a 2-4 with us taking a broader look at this beyond just what can we do for in the short term on 2 movements.
Bev and then Patrick. Thank you, Matt.
I'm going to cut my comments about in half and just say ditto. Because your arguments were really spot on. Last time I thought, let's just be done with this. Let's let them manage that. Then I went home and I thought about this. I called them. They called back, and we had a conversation. And I started realizing, working with McEwen all the time, what a pain it has been with utilities and working with the state and all these things that I was thinking, wait a minute, I got that wrong. I totally got that wrong last time, because I think putting them in the manager seat of this project is a wrong thing to do. We need to take responsibility for this, and we need to do it. So I asked them to have a conversation with me, and after we had that conversation, you said you would call the other aldermen and everything, and then you put that in writing for us so we could really just take a look at it. And those were some of my concerns. After I thought about it, I thought, wait a minute, you have to manage, you could be here doing this for years because you have to manage the utilities. A nightmare. You have to do right-of-way, property right-of-ways. We were, how long have we been working on property right-of-ways right now? Crazy. So I'm looking at this, and you're trying to build a project over here and improve your intersection in front of it and do all the things you're required to do. This project needs to go on a CIP list. It really does. We need to take impact fees, we need to work with them. And if we don't want to take extra money from you, hey, I'm all for it. Take the money. If you can't legally, then let's take that out of the impact fees. Let's reduce your impact fees. Let's do something where we can take that money out of there. Let's work and figure out something to do with that. But I look at McEwen, I look at other places, look at Liberty and Carruthers. That was supposed to be 4 lanes up to the college, right after the college got built. They are still waiting on that. That's sort of been a nightmare too, because one utility, the next utility, they're trying to do all these utilities out there and get all that stuff done before they do the road. So I look at that and think, I don't think we should place that burden on them. I think that is the city's responsibility. So I had a come to Jesus meeting on that, trying to think, was I not thinking correctly on that? Because every day, every week, every month, we talk about McEwen. And we look at the intersections that we're doing all over town. So I think that this intersection does need to be put on there. And I will say one more thing, that first of all, the ramp was done by the city, not Drury. We did that. But you look at Franklin, the heart of Franklin is downtown. The heart of East and North Franklin is Cool Springs. And Cool Springs and Mallory is the heart. So is Carruthers a bit, but that is the heart, because that's where it all started over there. When the Galleria was built, all those things. And I did not live here at the time, but I went up and down 65 and I saw all of this being built. I saw the pasture lands and I watched it all develop. So I think we need to take that responsibility on ourselves and do that and figure all this financial stuff out with them.
Patrick?
Molly, I guess and listen, you guys I've really enjoyed getting to know Flournoy. I think this is a very well done development. I just wonder, and to Alderman Berger's point, though, then we don't discuss this normally on developments. We don't discuss who manages the road improvements. This is not normal. Respectfully, like, this is not normal where we sit here and talk about who's going to do what. We just don't. Because normally it gets vetted out in the process, and it takes care of itself, and people want to do business in Franklin, and, it's a big, so this is kind of weird. And so when I hear what you're saying, Bev, or Alderman Berger, where does it stop? So the next person that comes to us and says, "Oh, I don't want to manage my road improvement in front of my," because I don't, it's I think that it's kind of a slippery slope.
Theirs they are. It's the one that's removed.
But as a recommendation from staff of a road improvement that should be done for development, okay, regardless of the location of it, just in general. So you're saying you think that we have the capacity to do these away from it, but not, where are we going to draw the line when someone says, I don't want to take on the inflation, the cost overage risk, which are all valid things, but I guess I don't understand where it feels kind of special for this development. And then two, it also feels, I don't want, if we do start going to where this board feels like we should be managing more of these construction processes internally, like, let's update our organization, because engineering can't do it. We're behind as it is. So how many more staff is it going to take us to actively manage these construction projects long term? I think you begin to see, traditionally, this has just been how it's, like, how you do it when you build in Franklin. You pay for your road impact fees, and 9 times out of 10, you usually manage the road work. The only difference is this is a little bit further away. The thing is the 1.7, if we took that approach on every development, we would never actually get the logic of that. If it's 1.7, if we just divvied out that incrementally as it came up, it would be very difficult for a city to get major road improvements done. The city of Franklin has taken an approach, instead of doing property taxes or other taxes among the whole citizen base, and then, as you say, reimbursement, it's an attractive place to be. And so when you develop and you have an impact, that's what it is. This is a big development. We're not arguing. What's the budget of this project, roughly? Is that a fair question to ask?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of changes monthly with interest rates and
Wait till you
whatnot,
see
but
the water fees.
It's over $100 million.
Over $100 million. And frankly, we've spent almost more time on this than we have City Hall. In the last 2 or 3 months, for sure. The City Hall meetings get cut short.
Patrick, I think Miss Ann wants to
Yes,
respond to
please.
something you said, and then I'll get you Jason.
First of all, I want everyone to understand that developments do the work around their development, period. The city does not do that at all. It's turned out here, and they're talking about in the Cool Springs area, there are several failing intersections. Thank you. Intersections would be a good way to say it. But if you look at some of these other things that they say in here, they talk about if they affect 7% of the intersection, that's one of their other things that they were looking at. They don't come close. This development doesn't come close to having an effect of 7% on anything on Mowry or Mowry and Cool Springs at all. Not at all. But if you look here on that thing that they still have up there, they're showing the impact, the actual arterial impact fees that they're going to have to pay. And if you look here, on the ones that's really close to them, the McEwen Drive in Cool Springs, that's kind of right where it is. So that would be an offset of $890,000. And so they on the impact fees that they are supposed to pay based on this for arterial streets, there's only $676,000 left, and the cost of this particular one intersection is $2.4 million. So really, their impact fee part that has to do with this is like 28%. So in other words, they're being asked to handle, think about this, the other 72% there. That's what they're being asked. It is true that these things probably need to be worked on, no question about that. And I think I said last time, it's time for us to look back at our capital projects. That it hasn't been changed in 3 years whenever we updated the importance of it and ranking of it and everything. But I do think that their piece of money here is so small compared to what that the city is now saying that the cost would probably be, which may or may not be 2.4 million, and the probability is it's going to be more than that. And so that is one reason that I think that the city needs to handle this. They're still going to be paying the amount that they were required to pay.
So on those others, those others that she mentioned, the impact was 7% on some of these other ones that you mentioned.
The 7%
No,
has
impact, yeah.
The 7%.
Yeah, the traffic increase on the other, on the.
The 7% has absolutely nothing to do
With what they
why
pay.
we're requiring them to
That's
do it.
right.
The 7% is, if 7% of their trips are hitting a certain intersection, then we choose to study that intersection so
And they
because
make
they're
the
gonna have an
improvements.
impact. Correct.
So I guess this is where I'm getting at, is because you can't take 1.5%, take the total cost of the project and say you're only responsible for 1.5%. That's clearly, because these other projects, if the project cost was $4 million and they're increasing the traffic on that intersection by 7%, they did the $4 million, or whatever it was. They didn't pay 7% of the total cost. Do you see what I'm saying? So just because it's a 7% increase on that intersection, and the cost of the improvements that we said they needed to do was $3 million, I'm not looking at the examples, but the bottom line is, we still made them pay the full amount. Is that right?
But the thing is, how many people, you know, they showed us these projects that have been assessed and required to do work. Out of the 4, 1 of them has been done, but 3 of them were definitely less than $1 million. The entire project was less than $1 million. There was only one, no, the entire project was less than $1 million that they were having to pay. The one that was $2 million or something was assessed in like 2016. It still hasn't been done yet. So it seems to me that the city needs to get involved and make sure that it gets done.
No, I mean on this item. Like, and I think we need to round up this discussion, but I guess for
We-
the
we need-
applicant and
yeah.
for us, what do we need from here?
We need some direction from you all so that we can set the we can know if we're doing an impact fee agreement, what that looks like, and so that we can do the public hearing for the development plan and move all this through the rest of the process. But we link the road impact fee agreement with the development plan itself so that we're not doing one without the other. So it's all clear when you decide, make that decision. You know, I don't know if we want to provide some resolution at the next meeting and you all can just vote and we know what we're dealing with. Vernon seems to have an idea, which, if you want to throw something out there for consideration.
I do, and I think for the sake of moving on, because managing roadway improvements is you're going to run into certain issues, and to characterize utilities or acquisition as being problematic, they're part of the development process, and we're here to help marshal that through. What I'd like to do is spend time over the next couple of weeks, come back to you with some idea of a resolution, because Alderman Brown brought up one of the strategies, that if the city manages the project, then we have to talk about the timing of the city being able to do that after we talk about funding and capacity and everything else. That impacts their decision. But they heard it from you, and now we can go ahead and sit down and talk about, okay, if that's the math we're going to go down, what does that look like? Or is there some other type of sharing besides the 1.7? Scotty here is very good at working with our team to talk about true costs and what it looks like, even though we're pretty good at it because we work on it a lot. So we'll do that for the sake of time so you can get to the other items and get back on schedule for some of the
Back in 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Matt,
We will
is that all
work
right?
to give you something to make a decision on in 2 weeks so the rest of the process can move forward.
All right, Eric, item number,
And that'll be on the workshop and voting session both.
Well, you give us a direction, that helps us know what the road impact fee agreement looks like that you will consider as
Okay.
part of the development plan. So
But the money,
we do a road impact fee agreement typically that is a companion
Agreement.
with the development plan.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
And-
that's what I'm talking about.
and Vernon, when you bring that.
Eric, for clarification, when we move forward, will this move us into the work session in the same night?
Yes.
Go straight
You're going to vote
voting?
on something in 2 weeks.
Okay.
It may be just a resolution that gives us direction.
Are you getting
But
with
you'll have
them?
something
You're
that
getting with
gives us
them?
direction.
Okay. Can you also talk to us about, you know, there's small projects that we have. We have money in the reserve funds that we put through to smaller projects. This intersection, regardless of them, whether these seats are empty tonight and you're not even here and you don't even exist, that intersection is become a huge nightmare. We have to do something about it. And it's not about, I'm sorry, it's just not about your project. This is a bigger thing. It's a much bigger thing.
all right.
And maybe we have more money
We
somewhere
don't
else.
need to complicate that with that. Now,
This
we
is
wanna
a
know-
specific
this is
related
for
to this
right here.
situation.
That's right, it is.
Yeah.
All right, Kathleen, go ahead and start coming up so
Item
that we
5,
can
we'll
get
talk
to
about at the
Eric.
voting meeting. We can do that then. That's easy.
All right, item number 6, consideration of City of Franklin contract 2022-0213 between the City of Franklin and Mercy Community Healthcare for the reimbursement of up to $100,000 in community development block grant, coronavirus funds, and consideration of expenses incurred to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus.
Hit the button in the middle.
What is this? Great.
There you go.
Mercy Clinic has asked for $100,000 to put towards the development and construction of their new clinic. They are the only clinic in Franklin that serves the population that may or may not have insurance. It's a pay-as-you-go,
Sliding scale.
yes, sliding scale.
And this just kind of stays with what we've been doing with all these,
This is, yeah.
Care
it's
funds.
COVID money,
This is
CARES
the
Act.
COVID CDBG money. We still have available funds, and they meet the requirements and
They definitely meet the
impacted population.
And what is our current balance?
The current balance is $137,000.
Okay, great, we're chopping it away.
$425.13.
Thank you. Patrick, quickly?
I've just got to state that they're a client of mine, and I will probably need to recuse myself from that funding of.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Nate, if you'll start heading this way, we're going to take items 7 and 8 together. This is important. So we need to move through this.
So as they're coming up, we're going to blend these together. They're two different contracts, one that deals with the landfill component for municipal solid waste, the other that deals with the processing of our recyclables. And in both cases, we did a really good job of negotiating the current deals that we're under. And they have a few more years on them, but we have the ability to trade off some short-term savings for longer-term savings and capacity. And in both cases, that's what we're doing. And Mark and Nate will walk you through what that looks like. But I think these are both really good moves forward that guarantee us about 10 years of capacity in both. And really, I think what will be long-term significant savings, just judging on what will happen in the future. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Eric. So I will try and run through this as quickly as I can, but I want to answer questions as necessary. So anyway, when we started going down this path of reevaluating these contracts, we wanted to set several goals, one of which is to, as Eric mentioned, to establish not only long-term contracts, but contracts that had predictable costs at competitive rates. The other piece is that we would expect in 6 to 7 years be required to expand our transfer station based on how we're trending out in terms of solid waste we bring in. And then again, this is really consistent with what staff has been doing over the years, trying to find efficiencies in operations and enhance our services. So we had seen this slide before. This is the Marshall County recycling disposal contract. We entered into this in 2014. Very favorable rates to the city of Franklin with a $0 tipping fee. As you may recall, we've had 3 amendments to this contract that increased that tipping fee to $25 a ton, initially due to COVID earlier on, and then China had a policy shift in how they received recyclables, and essentially they went to a 0% contamination rate on recyclables they received from overseas, which essentially put the United States at a point where we can't send them our recyclables. Obviously drives costs up. So we started looking at, because of this, the cost for Marshall County has gone up, and being another government entity, we wanted to maintain a sustainable partnership with them. So as again, we've been paying them $25 a ton. That last amendment expired July 1 of this year. What we're looking at doing, because of these ongoing costs, as we see virtually everywhere, is to start introducing a ramp up of tipping fees starting at $30 a ton. And I don't have the date, sorry. Starting November 1st, the way it's written currently, but we can make modifications on the effective date. And then ramping up over the next several years through the end of our current contract As you'll see in the bullets, and I apologize for the wordiness of it, but we are, the amendment puts us at a value of 15% below the published gate rate. I think one of the concerns we had before is we're going from 0, really good deal for us, to market rate immediately. So we're looking to ramp up, still stay underneath their published gate rate, but make them a more sustainable partner in this, because otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah. So I do want to point out, you look at other Middle Tennessee recycling, I think you look primarily in Nashville, you're looking at $55 to $60 per ton for recyclables. Right now, we're at, well, currently 0. So, so that is the Marshall County amendment that we would like to put forward to you. We have had discussions with their staff. They seem to be amenable to the proposed changes for obvious reasons. But again, this would bring us to an area where we have a longer-term sustainable contract with pricing that we can rely on. So, any questions with respect to recycling thus far? Okay. So I'm sorry I'm talking so quickly. I did speak with Chris Franklin earlier about slowing down his speech. But here I am doing the opposite. Anyway, so by county, they are our municipal solid waste disposal. They do hauling for us from our transfer station and dispose of the waste up in the Clarksville area. We've been in this contract since 2013. That contract with all the extensions will expire in June of 2026. So again, this contract also has very favorable terms for us. And they have, Marshall County, or excuse me, Bi County has had a number of challenges because our disposal fee to them is well below market value. So we started reevaluating that and see if we can, again, look at them as a sustainable partner. One thing to point out is that Bi County is also another government entity. As you know, we operate not for profit. We're not here to earn a bunch of money and pay stakeholders and all that. They operate similarly. They're a not-for-profit organization. So again, we still have several years left on the terms of this contract. What we would like to discuss with you is recommending going to a tipping fee of $18.25 per ton, starting January 1st of 2023, and then eliminate their hauling piece of the contract. So right now, we pay $37.03 per ton for hauling and disposal. In effect, we're paying them about $12 per ton for disposal because of their hauling piece. So we've also, I think, mentioned last time, we did go out for a bid on a hauling contract. We received one bid from MBI for hauling and compaction, and I'll get back to the compaction piece here shortly. But the hauling would be $25.85 per ton. Add that to the $18.25, and we're looking at $40 and change. There's a table later on. So we are proposing that this rate gets changed via the CPI index annually, going through the end of the term of our current contract, and then picking back up through an additional 6 years, bringing us to 2032, with a rate starting at $28.50 per ton in 2027, or excuse me, 2026. Let's get into the numbers. So obviously the column on the far left is the year, the current contract. You see the effective tipping fees of $11.18 all the way through 2026, and they're relatively low, and you'll see a bump up in 2027. That $50.65 is what we would expect to see on the open market at a private landfill in that time. Currently, there are other government agencies in the area that are paying $45 a ton to private landfills. So this is based on an increase of 3% annually. So we think it's, a pretty, we feel pretty comfortable that based on the $45 a ton presently, that we'd be there in 2027. What we're recommending is, again, talking through how we would shift with Bi-County is go to $18.25 a ton this first year, and then a CPI index increase. These increases are based on 5% in this table, carrying us through 2026. And in 2027, again, going to a more market rate for them at $28.50 per ton. We did want to have, they were concerned with inflationary rates going higher than 5. This increase is going to be based on 5%. They were concerned with increases higher than that, so we did do a not to exceed, which is estimated at about 6%. And we carry that through the end of 2032, which in essence gives us a 9.5-year contract. When you add all that up with looking at the MBI hauling contract that we just bid, which is a 10-year term as well, and you look at us having to go to the private market in 2027, we would estimate that we would have a savings of about $3 million a year, over the next 10 years, up to $6 million over the next 10 years, should we maintain this relationship with Bi-County and do hauling. So one thing I wanted to bring you all back to was the compaction piece that I had mentioned briefly. In 6 to 7 years, we're going to have to expand our transfer station based on the amount of solid waste we're pulling in from residential customers and the commercial haulers that we have. And this is based on data that goes back, I believe it's 8 years worth of a trend. So we would expect to have to expand that capacity. The way the transfer station is arranged, it is not easily expanded. I'll just put it to you simply. So the compaction piece that we've been talking about actually provides us an effective increase in capacity. And that gives us a couple things. Not only do we avoid a pretty significant capital investment project in 6 to 7 years, but it also offers us the ability to bring in additional solid waste currently, which may help to offset additional costs that we're going to be seeing. That's something that there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I'm sorry that we're going so quickly through it. But again, Eric had mentioned that we've been looking at long-term, 10-plus years, and think with the volatility in the solid waste industry, particularly in Middle Tennessee, where landfill space is at a premium and may soon be at a much higher premium in the coming years, that this is the right move. It rebuilds partnerships with our long-term partners, and we think in the long run it's going to save us money. So wanted to put that out there. I actually just reviewed our goals here without going to the slide. But anyway, I'm happy to entertain any questions. Nate's here to answer any of the operations questions you may have as well.
Hey guys, believe it or not, I've been speaking the whole time through Mark. I was kind of saying projecting it through him, but the main thing, what we want to do, we have an opportunity here to, like we said, get long-term stability. We're in with this other government, and they feel comfortable with us reworking this deal, and that's exactly what we want to do. We don't want to jump out there. You guys saw on the chart where it jumped to $50. And then it's going to jump again, and it's going to jump again, and it's going to jump again. So we want to make sure that we can get in, lock this in for at least 10 years with probably an option another 5 year to stretch it out to 15 years. So we're really working hard trying to make this deal work with this government entity and build good faith with them, because we have had it good for the past 10 years. So 10 years ago, we were at this point. Now we're here again, so we need to move forward.
Clyde?
Where did their hauling drop out?
So they currently do hauling for us.
At 30, they take it, dump it, haul it for $36 a ton.
3703.
37, whatever.
Yep.
I was pretty close. So when did the hauling drop out, and then we contracted with somebody for $25 a ton?
We haven't yet. That's
They're
what this
they're
is.
continuing to do it, and that's
Okay.
part of their both cost and operational challenge.
Correct.
Right. So if you look at, and
But didn't you, I thought you just mentioned $25 a ton to haul.
so our hauling would go to $25 a ton. That hauling cost to Bi-County would be eliminated from the contract, and we would pay simply a tipping fee. And then we would take on the hauling, managing the hauling contract and contractor ourselves versus Bi-County doing it. So if you look at these effective tipping fee numbers, 2023, if you 3703 minus their hauling cost is what 1118 is, that's effectively what we're paying them for disposal when their current market rate's in the neighborhood of probably $25+ a ton. So we're less than half of what other people pay them, and that poses significant challenges to them. So they will have to rebid their hauling in November if we choose to continue on with the way we are. But again, the fear is in 2027, when we have to go back out to the open market and bid landfill costs and hauling costs, then our costs are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 a ton versus what we could expect if we work through these contract challenges with Bi-County now. So that's the reason for recommending this.
And we are able to link the compaction service
Yes.
with the hauling, which helps us deal with a capacity question as well.
So what are you gonna do about the compacting then? You say you don't have that's an issue, and it'll get here real quick.
It's part of the hauling contract.
Part of the hauling contract.
They'll provide that
Yes,
with
sir.
that.
Yes, so there's no cost implementation of a compactor in our transfer station. We would pay $1 per ton for compaction, but in effect, it provides us with an alternative that's a lot safer. Right now, we have open-top tractor trailers that you have to tarp. These are essentially a tanker-type truck filled with trash. So,
All right, 10 minutes enough to switcheroo? 10 minutes.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.